Friends, my channel name is Indian Epic History. Search this name on YouTube and select playlist option for all videos like Ramayan, Mahabharat, Puran. Otherwise, click the channel name below the video, then go to the playlist. This is Bori Critical Valmiki Ramayan book, chapter 65, Balkanda. When it was sparkling morning, the king performed the morning rituals and invited the great soul Vishwamitra and Raghava. Press the red subscribe option and press the bell icon for my latest video updates. Following the ordinances laid down in the sacred text, he worshipped the great soul one and the two great souled Raghavas. He then spoke these words: O illustrious one, O unblemished one, welcome. What can I do for you? O illustrious one, command me, I am ready to be commanded by you. The one with dharma in his soul was thus addressed by the great soul Janaka, the sage eloquent in the use of words. Janaka means Sita's father replied in these words to the valiant one: These two are the sons of Dasharatha. They are Kshatriyas and are famous in the world. They wish to see the supreme bow that is in your possession. O fortunate one, if they can see the bow, the wishes of these two princes will be satisfied. Having seen the bow, as they wish, they can then return. Thus addressed, Janaka replied to the great sage: Hear about the bow and about why it is kept here. There was a king famous by the name of Debaratha, and he was the sixth in line from Nimi. The illustrious and great souled one left it in his hands in trust. Earlier, at the time of the destruction of Daksha's sacrifice, the valiant Rudra angrily raised the bow and playfully spoke to the gods. O gods, I desired a share of the sacrifice, but you did not think of a share for me. Therefore, I will sever your leads with his extreme revered bow. O bull among sages, at this all the gods were distressed. They sought the favors of the Lord of the gods, and Bhava was pleased. Happy, he bestowed his favors on those great souled ones. O Lord, after this the great souled God of the gods handed over this gem of a bow in trust to our ancestor. Later, I was ploughing and purifying my field. From the field, my unpraised plug brought up the one who has become famous by the name of Sita. Having been raised from the surface of the ground, she was rated as my daughter. She was not born from a womb, and this maiden will be bestowed as Birya Shulka. Having been raised from the surface of the ground, she has grown up as my daughter. O bull among sages, these kings have come to seek her hand. O illustrious one, I have now bestowed my daughter on any of the kings who have come. I will bestow my daughter through the mode of Birya Shulka. O bull among sages, that is the reason all these kings have assembled here. They have arrived in Mithila to test their valor. Their valor will be tested by their ability to raise the bow. However, none of them have been able to grasp the bow or raise it. O great sage, I got to know that those valiant ones possesses little valor. O store of austerities, listen, I therefore refused all those kings. O bull among sages, at this the kings were extremely enraged, since their valor was being doubted. All of them laid siege to Mithila. O bull among sages, they thought that they had been slighted. Therefore, Prey to great rage, they oppressed the city of Mithila. After an entire year passed, everything began to suffer, and the supplies were exhausted. O best among sages, that is the reason I became extremely miserable. After this, I pleased the large number of gods. Through my austerities, extremely pleased, the gods gave me armies with four kinds of forces. Through this, those evil acting and cowardly kings who doubted my valor were routed, killed, and driven away in different directions, together with their advisors, O tiger among sages, O one excellent in vows. I will show that extremely radiant bow to Rama and Lakshmana too, O sage. If Rama is capable of stringing that bow, I will bestow my daughter Sita, who was not born from a womb, on Dasharatha's son. Next chapter 66. Having heard Janaka's word, the great sage Vishwamitra told the king, "Show Rama the bow." At this, King Janaka instructed his advisors, "Bring the divine bow decorated with fragrance and garlands here." Commanded by Janaka. That means Sita swayambar is fake. There is no Sita swayambar mentioned here. Okay, you can read it again. The advisors entered the city. Following the king's command, they emerged, placing the bow at the front. There were 5,000 tall and great-souled men. Together, they somehow managed to tug it along on a casket with 8 wheels. Having brought the iron casket with the bow, the ministers informed the king, who was like a god. O king, this is the supreme bow that is worshipped by all the kings, O lord of Mithila, O Indra among kings. This is what you wish to be shown. Hearing these words, the king joined his hands in salutation and addressed the great soul Vishwamitra and Rama and Lakshmana. O Brahmana, this is the supreme bow worshipped by those of the Janaka lineage. Extremely valiant kings have not been able to use it to take aim, nor even the large numbers of gods, Asuras, Rakshas, Gandharvas, the best of Yakshas, Kinnaras, or the giant serpents. How can man raise the bow, string it, affix an arrow, and take aim with it? O bull among sages, O immensely fortunate one, the best among bows has been brought so that it can be shown to the two princes Vishwamitra with dharma in his soul. Heard Janaka's word, he told Raghava, O Rama, O son, behold the bow. Hearing the Maharishi's words, Rama opened the casket where the bow was kept. He saw the bow and said, O Brahmana, I wish to touch this supreme bow with my hands. I want to try to raise it and take aim with it. The king and the sage said, Go ahead. Go ahead. Hearing the sage's word, he playfully grasped the bow at the middle. While many thousands of men looked on, the descendant of the Raghu lineage with dharma in his soul playfully strung the bow. The valiant one, immensely illustrious and best among men, strung the bowstring and took aim. The bow snapped at the middle. The great sound arose like the roar of a storm. It was as if there was an extremely giant earthquake that made the mountains shudder. Confounded by the sound, all the men, with the exception of the supreme among sages, the king, and the two Raghavas, fell down unconscious. When the man regained their senses, having got his composure back, the king joined his hands in salutation and spoke these words to the bull among sages, who was eloquent with words. O illustrious one, I have witnessed the valor of Rama, Dasharatha's son. This is extremely wonderful and unthinkable. This is something that has not even been talked about. If Sita gets Rama, Dasharatha's son, as her husband, my daughter will bring fame to the lineage of the Janakas. O Kaushika, my truthful plague is that she will be bestowed as Birya Shulka. my daughter Sita is worth many of my lives, and it is my view that she should be given to Rama. O Brahmana, with your permission, let my ministers quickly go. O Kaushika, O fortunate one, let them go to Ayodhya on chariots with diligent words. Let them bring the king to my city. Let them tell him everything and about the bestowal through Birya Shulka. They will also tell the king that the two Kukutsas are under the protection of the sage. With affectionate words, they will bring the king extremely swiftly. When Koshika agreed to this, the king addressed his ministers. The one with dharma in his soul commanded them and sent them to Ayodhya. Next, chapter 67. Following Janaka's instructions, the messengers used mounts that did not get exhausted. Resting for 3 nights along the way, they entered the city of Ayodhya. Following the instructions of the king, they entered the royal residence and saw the aged king Dasharatha, who was like a god. All the messengers showed their reverence by joining their hands in salutation. Control they spoke words with sweet syllables to the king. O one who follows the Agnihotra rites, King Janaka of Mithila asks about your welfare and what of your preceptors and priests. O great king, repeatedly using sweet words that are full of affection, Janaka also asked about the welfare of your servants. The lord of Videha and Mithila first eagerly asked about your welfare. With Kaushika's permission, he then addressed you in the following words. My former plague is known, that I will offer my daughter as Virya Shulka. Those intolerant kings were seen to be devoid of valor and were refused. O king, with Vishwamitra at the forefront, your brave sons have come and have won my daughter. O great king, in a great assembly of people, the great soul Rama has shattered the divine bow in the middle. As Virya Shulka, I must bestow Sita on the great souled one. That is my plague, and I desire that you should grant me your permission. O great king, O fortunate one, with the priest at the forefront, you should quickly come with your preceptors and see the two Raghavas. O Indra among kings, you should display your affection towards me. You will also be delighted at seeing both your sons. These are the sweet words that the Lord of Videha has spoken. This has Vishwamitra's permission, and Shatananda holds the same view. On hearing the words of the messengers, Shatananda was Ahilya's son, Ahilya and her husband. The king was greatly delighted. He addressed Vasishtha, Bhamadeva, and the other ministers. The one who extends Kaushalya's delight has been protected by Kaushika's son. With his brother Lakshmana, he now resided in Videha. The great soul Janaka was witnessed Kukutsaya's valor. He wished to bestow his daughter on Raghava. If all of you find the great soul Janaka's intentions desirable, let us quickly go to that city without wasting any time on reflection. The ministers and all the Maharshis agreed to this. Extremely happy, the king told his ministers, we will leave tomorrow honored well. The king's ministers, all of whom possessed all the desired qualities, happily spent the night there. Next, chapter 68. When the night was over, with his preceptors and his relatives, King Dasharatha happily spoke to Sumantra, let all the superintendents of treasuries collect large quantities of riches prepared well. Let them advance in front with many kinds of jewels following my instruction. Let excellent carried be yaked at the same time, and let an army with the 4 kinds of forces quickly advanced. Vasishtha, Bhamadeva, Javali, Kashyapa, Markandeya, and Katyayana Let these Brahmanas with long leaves advance in the front. Let my chariot be yoked. The messengers are asking me to speed up and not delay. Following the king's words, half of the army, consisting of the four kinds of forces, proceeded with the king and the rishis. The other half followed at the rear. After traveling for 4 days along the road, they reached the extremities of Videha. On hearing this, the prosperous King Janaka arranged for all the honors to be shown. On meeting King Janaka, the aged King Dasharatha was delighted. The king was also supremely delighted. Happy, the best of men spoke to the best of men. O great king, O Raghava, welcome. It is good fortune that you have come here. You will obtain happiness through your two sons who have a trumpet because of their valor. It is good fortune that the greatly energetic and illustrious Rishi Vasishtha has come here with all the other supreme Brahmanas like Shatakratu with the gods. It is good fortune that all obstructions have been conquered. It is good fortune that my lineage has been honored. I will have this a matrimonial alliance with the Raghavas, who are great souled and the best among those who are brave. O Indra among kings, you should begin the arrangements tomorrow morning. O best among kings, after the conclusion of the sacrifice, with the permission of the rishis, the marriage ceremony will be held. In the midst of the rishis, the Lord of Men heard these words. The one who was best among those who are eloquent with words replied to the Lord of the earth, the nature of a gift is determined by the donor. This is what I have heard in earlier times. O one who knows about Dharma, we will do exactly what you have said. He was devoted to Dharma and famous. He was truthful in speech. On hearing his words, the Lord of Videha was greatly astonished. All the sages were greatly delighted at having met each other. They spent the night happily. The king was greatly delighted at having spoken to his sons, the two Raghavas, honored extremely well by Janaka. He resided there. The greatly energetic Janaka, who knew the truth about the rituals, followed Dharma and performed them. Having performed sacrifices for his two daughters, he spent the night there. Next, chapter 69. When it was morning, Janaka had the rituals performed by the Maharshis, the one who was eloquent with the use of words then spoke these words to the priest Shatananda. My greatly energetic younger brother is extremely devoted to Dharma. He is famous by the name of Kushadbhaja and lives in the auspicious city that has moats all around it. Shatananda was son of Ahilya. Satananda was son of Ahilya. This sacred city of Samkashana seems to drink the water of the river Ikshumati. This city is like Pushpaka Vimana. I wish to see him, and it is my view that he should arrange for his sacrifice with me. That extremely energetic one will be delighted to participate in this on the instruction of the king, who was a tiger among men like Vishnu. Following Indra's command, messengers on swift steeds were dispatched. On the king's command, Kushadvaja arrived. He saw the great soul Janaka, who was devoted to Dharma. He greeted Shatananda and the king, who was devoted to Dharma. He ascended a supremely divine seat that befitted kings. Those two infinitely energetic brothers seated themselves. The brave ones then sent for Sudamana, best among ministers, or lord of ministers. Quickly go to the infinitely resplendent descendant of Ishvaku. Invite the invincible one here with his sons and his ministers. He went to the place meant for guests and saw the extender of the lineage of Raghu. Bowing his head down and greeting him, he said, O brave one, O Lord of Ayodhya, the Lord of Mithila and Videha is waiting to see you. With his preceptors and priests, hearing the words of the best among ministers, the king, with the large number of rishis and his relatives, went to the place where Janaka was. With his ministers, his preceptors, and his relatives, the king, best among those who are eloquent with words, spoke these words to the Lord of Videha, O great king. It is known to you that the illustrious Rishi Vasishtha is like a god to the lineage of the Ishvakus and can speak on our behalf about our conduct with the permission of Vishwamitra and that of all the Maharshis. Vasishtha with dharma in his soul will speak about my ancestry. When Dasharatha was silent, the illustrious Rishi Vasishtha, eloquent in the use of words, spoke these words to the Lord of Videha and his priest. Brahma's powers are not manifest. He is eternal, everlasting, and without decay. He had a son named Marichi, and Marichi's son was Kashyapa. Vishwavan was Kashyapa's son, and Manu is said to be Vishwavan's son. Manu was the first Prajapati and Ishvaku was Manu's son. Know that Ishvaku was the first king of Ayodhya. Ishvaku had a prosperous son, Bhikukshi. The great energetic Bhikukshi's son was the powerful Bana. The greatly energetic Bana's son was the powerful Anaranya. Anaranya had a son named Prithu and Prithu's son was Trishanku. Trishanku had an immensely illustrious son named Dudumara. Dudumara's son was the immensely energetic Maharatha Yuvanashva. Yuvanashva's son was the handsome king Mandhata. Mandhata's son was the handsome Susandhi. Susandhi had two sons, Dhrubashandi and Prasenjit. Dhrubashandi had an illustrious son named Bharata. The immensely energetic Bharata had a son named Asita. Since he was born with poison, he came to be known as Shagara. Shagara had a son named Asamanja, and Asamanja's son was Amshumat. Dilipa was Anshumat's son, and Dilipa's son was Bhagiratha. Bhagiratha's son was Kukutsa, and Kukutsa's son was Raghu. Raghu had an energetic son named Pravridha, but he grew up to be an eater of human flesh. He thus became Kalmashpada, and his son was Shankara. Sudarshana was Shankara's son, and Sudarshana's son was Agnivarna. Agnivarna's son was Shigraga, and Shigraga's son was Maru. Maru's son was Parshruka, and Ambarisha was born through Parshuraka. Ambarisha's son was Nahusha, lord of the earth. Yayati was Nahusha's son, and Yayati's son was Navaga. Navaga's son was Aja, and Aja's son is Dasharatha. Aja's son was Dasaratha, and Dasaratha's son was Ram Lakshmana. The brothers Ram and Lakshmana are Dasharatha's son right from the beginning. The lineage is kings is pure and extremely devoted to Dharma. There are brave ones who have been born in the lineage of Ishvaku and they are truthful in speech. O king, your daughter should be bestowed on Rama and Lakshmana, O best among men. They are equal and bestowal must always be on equals. Next, chapter 70. Thus addressed, Janaka joined his hands in salutation and replied, O fortunate one, you should now hear the supreme account of our lineage, O best among sages. At the time of bestowal, a person born in a lower lineage should recount everything about his lineage. O great sage, listen. There was a king named Nimi who was famous in the three worlds because of his own deeds. With dharma in his soul, he was supreme. He was greatest among spirited ones. His son was named Mithi, and Mithi's son was Janaka. This was the first one by one. First one by the name Janaka, and Udavashu was Janaka's son. Nandi Vardhana was born from Janaka and he had dharma in his soul. Nandi Varna's son was known by the name of Shuketu. Shuketu's son was the extremely strong Devarata who had dharma in his soul. It has been heard that Rajarsi Brihadratha was born from Devarata. Brihadratha's son was the extremely brave, intelligent, and powerful Mahavira. Sudriti, with truth as his valor, was Mahavira's son. Sudriti's son was Drishtaketu, who was extremely devoted to Dharma and had Dharma in his soul. Drishtaketu's son was the famous Rajarsi Haryashava. Haryashava's son was Maru, and Maru's son was Pratibandhaka. Pratibandhaka's son was King Kirtiratha, who had Dharma in his soul. Kirtiratha's son is known as Devamidha. Devamidha's son was Vibhuda, and Vibhuda's son was Maidraka. Maidraka's son was the extremely strong king Kirtiratha. Rajarsi Kirtiratha gave birth to Mahorama. Mahorama's son was Swarnaroma, who had Dharma in his soul. Rajarsi Swarnaroma's son was Rasboroma, who was great soul and knew about Dharma. He had two sons. I am the elder, and my younger brother is the brave Kushadhwaja. Since I am elder, the king, my father, installed me in the kingdom, having entrusted the task of looking after Kushadhwajas on me. He went to the forest. When my aged father went to heaven, I have followed Dharma in bearing this burden and have affectionately reared my brother Kushadhwaja, who is like a god. After some time, the brave king Sudhanva came from the city of Shamkasya and laid siege to Mithila. He asked me to give him Shiva supreme boy. He also said, bestow on me your lotus-eyed daughter Sita, O Brahmana Rishi. When I did not give him this, he fought with me. In the battle, I killed Shudhanva, who had acted against me, O best among sages. When King Shudhanva was slain, I instated my brave brother Kuswadhwaja in Samkasya. O great sage, I am the elder and he is younger to me. O bull among sages, extremely delighted, I will give you these two fortunate daughters-in-law, Sita for Rama, Urmila for Lakshmana. My daughter Sita is like a daughter of the gods and is offered as Virya Shulka, and Urmila is the second, O descendant of the Raghu lineage. There is no doubt that extremely cheerfully I will bestow these two daughters-in-law. I state this in three ways. O king, let the Godana rituals be performed for Rama and Lakshmana. O fortunate one, let rites for the ancestors be performed next. After that, let the marriage ceremony be undertaken. O Lord, the Nakshatra Megha is in the ascendant now. The 3 days from now it will be Uttara Falguni. O king, arranged for the ceremony then, so that Rama and Lakshmana enjoy happiness. Let donations be made. Next, chapter 71. When the Lord of Videha spoke in this way, the great sage Vishwamitra, together with Vasishtha, spoke these words to the brave king. O bull among men, these two lineages are unthinkable and immeasurable. There is no other lineage that is a match for the Ishvakus and the Videhas. O king, these marriages are among those who are equal in dharma, equal in beauty, and equal in prosperity. Rama and Lakshmana and Sita and Urmila. O best among men, I have something to say. Listen to me. Your younger brother, King Kushadhwaja, knows about dharma. O king, he has two daughters who are devoted to dharma and their beauty is unmatched on earth. Bestow them as wives on Prince Bharata and the intelligent Satrughna. O king, for the sake of those two great soul ones, we will accept these daughters in their beauty and youth. All the Dasharatha's sons are like the guardians of the worlds and are like the gods in valor. O Indra among kings, let these two excellent lineages, auspicious in deeds, your and that of the Ishwakus, be closely tied to each other through an alliance. Having heard Vishwamitra's word, which were the agreement which Vasishtha's views, Janaka joined his hand in salutation and addressed those bulls among sages. As you have commanded, I also think his alliance is between two lineages that are equal. O fortunate one, let it be that way. Let Kusadhwaja's daughters tend to Shatrughna and Bharata as their wives. O great sage, let the four princes accept the hands of the four extremely strong princes on the same day. O Brahmana, the learned ones have praised a marriage on the day of Uttara Falguni when Bhaga is the presiding lord. Having spoken in this way, the amiable one arose and joined his hands in salutation. King Janaka spoke these words to those two supreme sages. You have performed a supreme act of dharma for me. I will always be your disciple, O bull among sages. Seat yourself on these excellent seats. In the way they are ruled, there is no difference between my kingdom and the Dasharatha city of Ayodhya. You should therefore act so that everything is properly undertaken. When the lord of Videha said this, King Dasharatha, the descendant of the Raghu lineage, cheerfully replied to King Janaka in these words, O lord of Mithila, you two brothers are immensely in your qualities. You have honored these rishis in this assembly of kings. O fortunate one, may everything be well with you. I will now go to my own abode and undertake the funeral rites for the ancestors. Having said this, King Dasharatha took his leave of the two kings, placing those two Indras among sages at the forefront. The immensely illustrious one swiftly departed, having gone to his abode. The king followed the ordinances and performed the funeral rites. When it was morning, he arose and performed the excellent rite of Godana. The king donated 100,000 cows to Brahmanas following Dharma. The king donated this in the names of each of his sons. The horns of these cows were encrusted with gold. They were donated with their cups and with brass vessels for milking them. The bull among men gave away 400,000 cows. The descendant of the Raghu lineage gave away many other kinds of riches to Brahmanas devoted to his sons. He undertook Godana in the names of his sons. Having undertaken Godana in the names of his sons, the king was as radiant as the agreeable Prajapati, surrounded by the guardians of the worlds. Next, chapter 72. On the day when the king performed the excellent Godana rites, on that very same day the brave Yudhajit arrived. He was the son of the king of Kakya and Bharata's own maternal uncle. Having met the king, he asked about his welfare in these words. Affectionately, the king of Kakya has inquired about your welfare. You will also be interested in the welfare of those who are there, and as of now, they are well. O Indra among kings, O descendant of the Raghu lineage, the king wished to see my sister's son, and that is the reason I was sent to Ayodhya. I heard in Ayodhya that you had left for the marriage with your sons, O king. That is the reason I have come here to Mithila to meet you, to see my sister's son. I have quickly come here. King Dasharatha saw that his bestowed guest had arrived. On seeing this, he honored the one who deserved honors with great worship. When the night was over, with his great souled sons, and placing the rishis at the forefront, he arrived at the sacrificial arena at the appropriate hour when all the auspicious signs for victory were present, adorned in ornaments. Rama and his brothers performed the sacred rites. They placed Vasishtha and the other Maharshis ahead of them. The illustrious Vasishtha addressed the Lord of Videha. O King, King Dasharatha has performed all the auspicious rites with his sons, the Supreme One, among the best among men, now desires a donor. All forms of prosperity result when the receiver accepts from the donor. Following your own dharma, now perform the excellent wedding rites. He was addressed in these words by the great soul Vasishtha. The extremely generous and immensely energetic one, supremely devoted to Dharma, replied in these words, who is preventing entry? Whose instruction are you waiting for? This is your own house. What are you thinking about? What are you thinking about? This kingdom is like your own, O best among sages, having performed the auspicious rites. My daughters have arrived at the sacrificial altar. They are like the flames of a blazing fire. I have prepared everything and am waiting for you at the sacrificial altar. There are no obstruction. What is the king waiting for? Hearing Janaka's word with his sons and with the large number of rishis, Dasharatha entered. King Janaka spoke to the one who extended Kaushalya's delight. This is my daughter Sita, and she will perform every act of dharma with you. O fortunate one, if you also desire her, accept her hand with your hand. O Lakshmana, O fortunate one, come here, I have earmarked Urmila for you. If you also desire her, accept her hand. You should not waste any time in thinking. Having spoken to him, Janaka addressed Bharata, O descendant of the Raghu lineage, accept Mandavi's hand with your hand. Lord Janaka, with dharma in his soul, also spoke to Shatrughna, O mighty armed one, accept Shrutakriti's hand with your hand. All of you are agreeable. O Kukutsas, with your wives, all of you will be excellent in the observance of vows. You should not waste time in thinking. Hearing Janaka's word and with Vasishta's sanction, the four accepted the hands of those four with their hands. With their wives, those excellent ones born in Raghu lineage, progressively circumambulated the fire, the sacrificial altar, the king, and the rishis. They acted as they had been asked to. Following the ordinances, the marriages were concluded. A great shower of radiant followers rained down from the sky. Divine drums were sounded, and there were the sounds of singing and musical instruments. Large number of apsaras danced and Gandharvas sang in melodious tones. At the marriage of the best among Raghus, this was the wonderful spectacle. While this was going on, trumpets were sounded with their wives. Those greatly energetic ones circumambulated the fire thrice. After this, with their wives, the descendants of the Raghu lineage went to the residence meant for guests. While the large number of rishis looked on, the king followed them with his relatives. When the night was over, taking his leave of the kings, Vishwamitra, the great sage, left for the northern mountains. After Vishwamitra had left, the king took his leave of the lord of Videha and Mithila. King Dasharatha swiftly left for his own city. The king of Videha gave his daughters many kinds of riches. The lord of Mithila gave them hundreds and thousands of cows, the best of blankets, crores of silken garments, elephants, horses, chariots, and foot soldiers. The father also gave his daughters excellent male and female servants adorned in ornaments that seemed divine. There were gold, silver, pearls, and coral. Extremely happy, he gave his daughters these supreme riches. Having given these many kinds of riches, the king took the king's permission. The lord of Mithila entered his own residence in Mithila with his great soul sons. The king and lord of Ayodhya proceeded. All the rishis were at the forefront, and he was followed by his forces. The tiger among men proceeded with the large number of rishis and the Raghavas. At this time, in very direction, a terrible sound of birds was heard. On earth too, all the animals circled leftwards. On seeing this, the tiger among kings asked Vasishtha, "The birds are distracted and behaving in a terrible way. The animals are also circling leftwards. Why is this? My heart is trembling and my mind is distressed." Hearing Dasharatha's word, the great Rishi replied sweetly, "Where here the what this portent, a terrible and divine fear present itself, and this is being voiced from the mouths of the birds. The animals will be pacified, and his torment will pass." While they were conversing, a wind began to rage. It made the earth tremble and brought down the auspicious trees. The sun was enveloped in darkness, and none of the direction could be discerned. Everything was covered in ashes, and the army was confounded. Vasishtha and the other sages and the king and his sons remained stationed there. Through all of them were in their senses. They seemed to be unconscious. The army was surrounded in the terrible darkness and the ashes. At that time, a form was seen. A form was seen. He was terrible in appearance with circle of matted hair. He was as unassailable as Kailasha, and he was extremely difficult to withstand. Like the fire of destruction, he seemed to blaze in his energy, and ordinary people found it impossible to look at him. A battle axe was slung on his shoulder, and he wielded a bow that was like a flash of lightning. He held the best among arrows, like Hara at the time of the destruction of Tripura. They saw him terrible in form, like a blazing fire. Vasishtha and the best among Brahmanas were devoted to meditation and oblations. All those assembled sages began to discuss among themselves. He became intolerant because of his father's death and destroyed the Kshatriyas. Having killed the Kshatriyas earlier, his intolerance and fever were dispelled. Is he again interested in destroying the Kshatriyas? Having said this, they offered Argha and Bhargava, who was terrible to behold. The rishis addressed him in these sweet words: "O Rama," means Parshurama, having accepted the honors from the powerful rishi, the Rama, who was Jamadagni's son, spoke to the Rama, who was Dasaratha's son. Jamadagni's son was Parshurama and Dasaratha's son was Rama. Next, chapter 74. O Rama, the Dasharatha's son, O brave one, I have heard about your extraordinary valor. I have heard everything about how you shattered the bow. That shattering of the bow is wonderful and unthinkable. On hearing this, I have come here with another auspicious bow. This is the great bow received from Jamadagni, and it is terrible in form. String it and afflicts a bow. Show me your own strength. I will witness your strength in your ability to string this bow. If you can do this, you can pride yourself on being valiant, and I will then grant you a duel." Hearing these words, King Dasharatha's face became downcast, distressed. He joined his hands in salutation and said, "O Brahmana, your anger against the immensely illustrious Kshatriyas has been pacified. My sons are children." Dasharatha told, "My sons are children. You should grant them freedom from fear. You have been born in the lineage of the Bhargavas. You are engaged in studying and are devoted to your vows. Your promise, the one with the 1,000 eyes, that you would cast aside your weapons, devoted to Dharma. You then gave the earth away to Kashyapa. Having given him that, You went to the forest, becoming like a standard to Mount Mahendra, O great sage, have you decided to destroy all of us while all of us are alive? It is not possible for you to kill Rama alone. While he was speaking in this way, Jamadagni's powerful son ignored Dasharatha's words and spoke to Rama instead. There are two supreme bows. They are divine and famous in the world. They are firm and excellent and have been crafted well by Vishwakarma. O best among men, O Kukutsa, the gods gave one of these to Trayambaka when he wished to fight and destroy Tripura. This is the one that has been shattered by you. The best among the gods gave the second invincible one to Vishnu. O Kukutsa, this is uh, innately equal to Rudra's bow. Once all the gods reflected on your strengths and weaknesses of Shitikanda and Vishnu and asked the grandfather supreme among those who are truthful, ascertained that the gods wish to uh, engender a conflict. There was a great encounter between Shitikanta and Vishnu. As they sought to defeat each other, this made the body stand up. Through his yawn and hunkara, Shiva's terrible and excellent bow was encountered. The three-eyed Mahadeva was reddened motionless. The gods, with large numbers of rishis and charanas assembled, they sought pacification, and those two supreme among gods decided on seeing that Vishnu's powerful yawn had rendered Shiva's bow powerless. The gods and the large number of rishis deduced that Vishnu was superior. So, friends, Vishnu is superior. Vishnu is supreme God among, and I know this. Vishnu is supreme God. The immensely illustrious Rudra was enraged and gave this bow with the arrows still held in this hand to Rajarisi Devbrata from Videha. O Rama, this is Vishnu's excellent bow, capable of vanquishing the cities of enemies. Vishnu gave it to Richika Bhargava to be held in trust. The immensely energetic Richika gave this divine bow to his great souled son Jamadagni, who cannot be encountered in his deeds and who was my father, full of the strength of austerities, cast aside his weapons and was killed by Arjuna, whose intelligence was superior. Arjuna means Kartibirya Arjuna. I heard about the extremely terrible and unrevealed account of my father's death. Because of the anger that resulted and exterminated a large number of Kshatriyas, O Rama, having obtained the entire art, I handed it over to the great soul Kashyapa as an auspicious act of dakshina at the end of a sacrifice. Having given it away full of the strength of austerities, I made my abode on Mount Mahendra. Having heard about the stuttering of the bow, I have quickly come here, O Rama. This supreme and great Vaishnava bow has come to me through my father and grandfather, placing the dharma of Kshatriyas and the forefront, welding it, string it, and afflicts an arrow to this bow, which is the conqueror of enemy cities. O Kukutsa, if you are capable of doing this, I will thereafter grant you a duel. Next chapter 75. Hearing the words of Jamadagni's son, showing respect to his father Rama, Dasharatha's son addressed him in these words: O Bhargava, I have heard about the deeds that you have accomplished. O Brahmana, I also applauded what you did to repay the debt to your father. O Bhargava, in following the dharma of Kshatriyas, you Deem me to be inferior in valor and incapable. You slight my energy, therefore witness my valor now. Raghav's hand were dexterous in his valor. Having said this, he angrily seized Bhargava's supreme weapon and an arrow. Rama strung the bow and affixed an arrow to it. Rama then angrily spoke these words to Rama, who was Jamadagni's son. You are a Brahmana and deserve to be worshipped. There is also Vishwamitra to consider, O Rama. Therefore, I am incapable of releasing this bow, which can take away your life. O Rama, you can swiftly travel wherever you want. You have also conquered and obtained unmatched worlds through your strength of your austerities. Of these two, I will destroy whichever one you wish. This is a Vaishnava bow and a divine arrow that can destroy the cities of enemies afflicted to it. This destroys strength and insolence, and its valor is inviolate, placing the grandfather at the forefront. Large number of rishis and gods assembled to see Rama and the supreme weapon. There were Gandharvas, Apsaras, Siddhas, Charanas, Kinnaras, Yakshas, Rakshasas, and serpents, desiring to witness the great and extraordinary wonder. As Rama wielded that supreme bow, the words seemed to be senseless. Rama, who was Jamadagni's son, became devoted of his valor and glanced at Rama, devoid of his energy and devoid of his valor. Jamadagni's son was benumbed. Extremely gently and softly he spoke to the lotus-eyed Rama. Earlier I gave the earth to Kashyapa. Kashyapa told me, do not recite it my domination. Following the words of my preceptor, I do not dwell on the earth and nights. O Kukucha, this is the plague I made to Kashyapa. O brave one, O Raghava, therefore you should not destroy my mobility. With the speed of the thought, I will go to the supreme Mount Mahendra. O Rama, through my austerities I have conquered unmatched worlds. Do not waste time in thinking. With this supreme arrow, destroy those worlds. I know you to be the destroyer of Madhu, the one without decay. You are the Lord of the gods. I know this from your touch on the bow, scripture of the enemies. May you be well. This large number of gods has assembled and is looking at you. Your duels are unmatched and you cannot be countered in a fight. O Kukutsa, I should not be ashamed at this. You are the preceptor of the three worlds, and I have been countered by someone like you, O Rama. O one excellent in vows, release the unmatched arrow. When the arrows has been released, I will go to the supreme Mount Mahendra. Jamadagni's son spoke in this way to Rama. The handsome Rama, Dasharatha's son, released the supreme arrow. The darkness was dispelled and all the directions could be seen. The gods and all the rishis praised Rama and the unpraised weapon. Rama, who was Jamadagni's son, praised the Rama, who was Dasharatha's son. Having circumambulated him, the Lord, who no longer possessed any worlds, went away. Next chapter 76. When Rama had departed, Rama, who was Dasharatha's son, becomes serene of soul. He handed over the bow and the arrow to the immeasurable Varuna. Rama worshipped Vasishtha and the other best of rishis, seeing that his father was still distracted. Rama, the descendant of the Raghu lineage, said, Jamadagni's son has departed, protected by you. Let the army with the four kinds of forces pressed towards Ayodhya. Hearing Rama's words, King Dasharatha embraced his son with his arms and inhaled the fragrance of Raghava's head. On hearing that Rama had departed, the king was delighted. He urged the soldiers to quickly leave for the city. There were beautiful flags and standards. Sounds could be heard from the trumpets. The charming royal roads were sprinkled with water and flowers were strewn on them. Citizens sounded auspicious musical instruments at the gate of the royal palace. As the king entered, the palace was adorned and full with a large number of people, with other royal women, Kaushalya, Sumitra, and the slender waisted Kaikeyi engaged themselves in welcoming the daughter-in-law. The immensely fortunate Sita, the illustrious Urmila, and Kushadwaja's two daughters were received by the royal ladies. Everyone was smeared with auspicious paste and adorned in silken garments. All of them quickly went to the abodes meant for the gods and performed worship there. All the princesses worshipped those who should be honored. All of them found pleasure with their husbands. They had obtained wives and weapons. They had obtained riches and well wishers. Those bulls among men engaged themselves in tending to their father. Rama, with truth as his valor, obtained great fame in this world because of his superior qualities. He was like swayambu to all creatures. With Sita, Rama found pleasure for many seasons. This spirited one was devoted to her, and her heart was also always devoted to him. Her father had bestowed her as a wife, and she became Rama's beloved. His delight and qualities were enhanced by her qualities. Her husband's heartfelt devotion to her doubled because of this. Whatever was in the innermost portions of their hearts became manifest to each other. Mathili, Sita, Janaka's daughter, was special and was like the gods in her beauty. She was as beautiful as Sri. The beautiful and supreme princess was united with the delightful son of a Rajrishi. Rama was extremely radiant, like someone who is extremely desired. He was like the god Vishnu, the lord of the immortals, united with Sri. This ends Balkanda. Next, Ayodhya Kanda, chapter 2, in my next video.